It is 3 a.m. Somewhere in Ukraine, in a basement bunker with no windows, a young drone operator stares at a screen. On that screen, a live feed from 1,400 kilometers away. Deep inside Russia, a massive factory complex. Floodlights, armed guards, fences. The facility that builds the very missiles raining down on Ukrainian cities every single night. His hands are steady. His breathing is slow. He has been training for this moment for 6 months. He presses the button, and in the next 4 minutes, everything changes. This is the story of Operation Phantom Strike, the mission Russia said was impossible. Stay with us. Welcome back. Tonight we are telling you the full story of one single operation, from the moment Ukraine identified the target, to the months of secret preparation, to the night the drones launched, to the moment the factory burned. This is not a summary, this is not a headline. This is the complete story of how Ukraine pulled off one of the most daring military operations in modern history. Let us begin. To understand why Operation Phantom Strike matters so much, you first need to understand what Ukraine was targeting. Deep in the Udmurtia region of central Russia sits a factory that most people on this planet have never heard of, the Votkinsk machine building plant. From satellite imagery, it looks like any other sprawling Soviet-era industrial complex. Gray concrete walls stretching for kilometers, tall chimneys cutting into the gray Russian sky, miles and miles of security fencing, rail lines running in and out of the complex in every direction. But inside those walls, Russia builds the weapons that define its military power. The Iskander ballistic missile, a weapon capable of striking a target the size of a dining table from 300 kilometers away with pinpoint accuracy. Russia has used thousands of them against Ukraine, against Ukrainian hospitals, against Ukrainian apartment buildings, against Ukrainian power stations. Every single one of them built here. Then there is the Yars intercontinental ballistic missile, Russia's primary nuclear delivery system, designed to carry multiple nuclear warheads across continents, capable of hitting any city on Earth within 30 minutes of launch, also built here. And then, the weapon Putin is most proud of, the Oreshnik, Russia's newest hypersonic missile, a weapon traveling at 10 times the speed of sound, so fast that existing air defense systems have no reliable way to intercept it. Putin stood on Russian state television in late 2024 and told the entire world, nobody can stop this missile. It is the future of warfare. It is unstoppable, and it is built right here in this one factory in the Udmurtia region, 1,400 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, in a place Putin believed nobody could ever reach. Ukrainian military intelligence had a different idea. The intelligence operation that made Phantom Strike possible began 14 months before the first drone ever launched. It started with a single satellite pass over Udmurtia in January 2025. A Ukrainian intelligence analyst noticed something in the imagery, an expansion of the rail loading facility on the eastern side of the Votkinsk complex. New tracks being laid, new loading platforms being constructed. That meant one thing: Russia was increasing missile production output. More missiles being built, more missiles being shipped to the front line, more Ukrainian cities being targeted. The analyst flagged it immediately. Within a week, Ukrainian military intelligence had tasked 2 commercial satellites to perform dedicated passes over Votkinsk every 48 hours. Over the next 6 months, they built a picture of the factory so detailed it was almost architectural. They could identify individual vehicles in the factory parking lot. They could track the timing of shift changes by counting how many cars arrived and departed at specific times. They mapped every building, every access road, every external power line. But satellite imagery alone was not enough. Ukraine needed human intelligence inside Russia. This is the part of the story that will likely never be fully told publicly. But what is known is this: Ukrainian intelligence had developed a network of sources inside Russia over the course of the war. Ordinary Russian citizens, former factory workers, people who had grown tired of Putin's war and were quietly willing to share information. From these sources, Ukraine learned 3 things that no satellite could ever show them. First, the factory's internal layout. Which buildings housed which production lines, where finished missiles were stored before rail shipment, where the factory's central power distribution was located. Second, the security rotation schedule, the exact times when guards changed shifts, the brief windows when attention and alertness naturally dipped. And third, something extraordinary. 3 natural blind spots in the radar coverage directly above the factory's western approach corridor, created by a ridge of low hills 12 kilometers west of the facility. Hills that blocked the ground radar's line of sight at low altitude. 3 windows of near invisibility, each one lasting between 6 and 9 minutes as the radar arrays completed their rotation cycles. When this intelligence reached Charlie's desk, he stared at it for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called his command commanding officer. He said 4 words: "I think we can do this." Charlie gathered his core team of 12 operators and 1 lead engineer in a basement facility in central Ukraine. The location of this facility is still classified. Nobody outside that room knew what was being planned. Not even all of Ukraine's senior military command had full visibility of Operation Phantom Strike. Secrecy was absolute, because the biggest threat to a mission like this is not Russian radar. It is a leak. 1 word in the wrong place, 1 phone call intercepted, 1 message read by the wrong person, and Russia would have time to move assets, increase patrols, plug the radar gaps. So Charlie's team operated in total isolation for 6 months. No personal phones, encrypted communications only, controlled access to the facility at all times. Now they had to solve the problem that everyone said could not be solved: range. Votkinsk was 1,400 kilometers away. Ukraine's AN-196 Lyuty drone, the best long-range strike drone in Ukraine's arsenal at the time of planning, had a maximum operational range of 1,000 kilometers. They were 400 kilometers short. The engineer assigned to this problem was a 31-year-old aeronautical engineer from Kharkiv, whose name will probably never be made public. He worked on the range problem for 94 consecutive days. His solution was elegant in its simplicity. He modified the Lyuty's internal fuel reservoir by redesigning the payload chamber, by reducing the explosive warhead weight by 18%, and redistributing that internal space to additional fuel capacity. He gained 340 kilometers of additional range. He then added a carbon fiber outer skin to the drone's fuselage. This reduced its radar cross-section by approximately 60%, making it dramatically harder for ground radar to detect even if it was within radar range. And finally, he reprogrammed the flight management system to maintain a constant altitude of exactly 47 meters above ground level, low enough to stay below the detection threshold of Russia's most common ground-based radar arrays, high enough to clear typical terrain obstacles along the planned flight corridor. After 94 days of engineering and 11 days of test flights in a remote area of western Ukraine, the modified Lyuty had a confirmed operational range of 1,540 kilometers. Votkinsk was comfortably within reach, but the engineering solution was only half the problem. The other half was getting 40 drones through one of the most heavily defended corridors of airspace on the planet. Between Ukraine's eastern border and Votkinsk lay S-400 long-range missile batteries, Pantsir close-range air defense systems, early warning radar stations positioned every 80 kilometers along the most likely approach routes. Charlie's team spent 8 weeks doing nothing but studying this corridor. They cross-referenced radar coverage maps with terrain elevation data. They identified the 3 natural blind spots created by the Udmurtia Hills. They timed the radar rotation cycles precisely using electronic intelligence gathered from Russian military communications, and they came to a conclusion that changed the entire approach of the operation. The blind spots alone were not enough. Russia's radar operators were too experienced, too alert. Even with blind spots, there was a meaningful risk of detection. They needed those operators distracted. They needed chaos on Russian radar screens at the exact moment the real drones were passing through the gaps. That was when Charlie designed the deception plan, and it was brilliant. The deception plan was built on one simple principle: give Russia too many targets to track. Ukraine would launch 230 cheap expendable drones at Russian border positions in Belgorod and Kursk regions at exactly 11:47 p.m. These drones would fly directly and obviously toward Russian positions. No attempt at concealment, no low-altitude flying. Flying high and fast where every Russian radar in the region could see them clearly. 230 incoming targets all at once. Russian air defense networks would immediately go to full combat alert. S-400 operators would begin target acquisition. Pantsir crews would prepare for engagement. Command centers would be shouting over radio networks trying to coordinate a response. Every radar operator from Belgorod to Perm would be staring at a screen showing a wall of incoming threats. Their full attention, their full processing capacity, consumed completely. And in that moment of organized chaos, 46 seconds after the decoy wave launched, the real drones would lift off, flying in the opposite direction initially to avoid any chance of radar detection near the launch sites, then curving north and east at low altitude, threading through the 3 radar blind spots above the Udmurtia Hills. Silent, dark, invisible. Charlie ran simulation after simulation of this deception plan. He tested what happened if Russian operators detected the low-altitude drones despite the distraction. He tested what happened if the radar blind spot windows were shorter than calculated. He tested failure scenarios for every variable he could imagine. After 47 simulations, the success rate was 91%. Charlie looked at that number for a long time. 91%. In 6 months of planning, he had taken an operation that seemed mathematically impossible and turned it into a 91% probability of success. He called the commanding officer again. This time, he said 3 words: "We are ready." March 14th arrived with conditions that seemed almost designed for the mission. No moon whatsoever. Dense cloud cover stretching across central Russia from the Ural Mountains to the Volga River. Ground visibility near Votkinsk less than 200 meters. Temperature minus 11 degrees. Perfect. Charlie assembled his full team in the bunker at 10 p.m. He gave a briefing that lasted 11 minutes. He went through each phase, each timing, each contingency. Then he looked around the room at 12 faces, some of them barely 20 years old. He said one thing: "Tonight we make history." At exactly 11:47 p.m. Ukrainian time, Charlie gave the first order. The decoy wave launched. 230 expendable drones lifted into the night sky simultaneously from multiple locations along Ukraine's eastern regions. They climbed fast, flying high, flying obvious. Within 90 seconds, Russian radar networks across 4 regions lit up simultaneously. Air defense command centers in Belgorod went to full combat alert. S-400 batteries in Kursk began target acquisition procedures. Pantsir units across the border zone powered up their engagement radars. Russian military radio networks exploded with chatter. Commanders were shouting. Operators were calling out target coordinates. Air defense batteries were requesting engagement authorization. 230 targets on Russian radar screens at the same moment. Absolute chaos. Exactly as Charlie had planned. 46 seconds later, at 11:48 p.m. and 46 seconds, Charlie gave the second order. In 3 separate fields in central Ukraine, 40 modified AN-196 LUT drones lifted silently into the freezing night air. No lights whatsoever, no radio transmissions, engines running at minimum acoustic output. Each drone flying at exactly 47 meters above the frozen ground below Russian radar, below detection, below Russia's ability to see them. On Charlie's main screen, 40 small blue dots appeared, moving slowly eastward into Russia. The first hour passed in complete silence in the bunker. Nobody spoke. 12 operators sat motionless watching their individual screens, each one responsible for 3 drones, each one breathing slowly and deliberately. The drones crossed the Russian border at 12 hours 31 minutes, still completely undetected. They passed silently over dark Russian villages, over frozen rivers reflecting nothing in the moonless sky, over forests of bare winter trees, over railway junctions and highway intersections where occasional trucks moved through the night completely unaware that 40 Ukrainian weapons were passing overhead at 47 meters altitude. At 1:23 a.m., the first real danger moment arrived. A Pantsir air defense unit stationed near the outskirts of the city of Perm was conducting a routine radar sweep of its local airspace. The sweep was moving directly toward the drone formation's flight corridor. Charlie watched the radar sweep arc on his tactical display, moving closer to the blue dots. Closer, closer. The entire bunker held its breath. 3 seconds from intersection, 2 seconds, 1 second. The radar arc completed its sweep and moved away. No lock, no detection, no alarm. The drones were flying low enough. The carbon fiber skin was doing its job. Charlie breathed out. The blue dots kept moving. By 2 hours 47 minutes, the drones were passing through the first radar blind spot above the Udmurtia Hills. The calculated window was 8 minutes long. They cleared it in 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Through the second blind spot at 2 hours 58 minutes, cleared in 5 minutes 41 seconds. Through the third and final blind spot at 3 hours 1 minute, and then open airspace above Votkinsk. Charlie activated the drone cameras simultaneously. On 40 screens across his bunker, the same image appeared. The Votkinsk factory complex, lit up by its own perimeter floodlights far below, exactly as they had studied it from satellite imagery for 14 months. Guards at the main gate doing their 3 a.m. patrol, completely unaware. The missile storage warehouse glowing orange under sodium lights on the eastern edge of the complex. The main assembly building in the center, the largest structure. Dark upper floors, lights still on in the lower production areas where the night shift was running. And on the northern perimeter, the factory power station, the heart of the entire facility. Charlie looked at his team one final time. Every face was calm, every hand was steady. He picked up his radio, said one word: go. 40 operators pressed their buttons at exactly the same moment. The first drone hit the missile storage warehouse on the eastern perimeter at 3 hours, 4 minutes, and 0 seconds. The explosion was so violent it shattered windows in residential buildings 4 kilometers away. Secondary explosions erupted within 3 seconds as stored Iskander missile propellant components ignited in a chain reaction that nobody inside the factory could slow or stop. Fireballs rose 200 meters into the night sky above Votkinsk, visible from 40 kilometers in every direction. The second wave hit the main assembly building 9 seconds later. 3 drones impacted the main production hall roof simultaneously. The structure collapsed inward. The precision manufacturing equipment inside, machinery calibrated to tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter, equipment that Russian engineers had spent over a decade developing and installing, destroyed in moments. A fourth drone hit the assembly building's secondary wing where Oreshnik components were staged for final integration. Gone. The third wave targeted the factory power station on the northern perimeter. 2 direct hits. The power station exploded and the entire factory complex went dark simultaneously. Emergency lighting flickered on briefly in some buildings. Then that went dark too. A final group of drones hit the rail loading facility on the factory's southern edge. The facility Russia used to load finished missiles onto trains for shipment to launch positions near the Ukrainian front line. 4 direct hits. The loading cranes collapsed. The rail tracks buckled from the heat of burning fuel stores nearby. The shipment route for finished missiles severed. Russian air defense around Votkinsk finally responded. Pantsir units that had been oriented toward the south and west suddenly detected the drones above the factory. They began firing, tracking fast-moving targets at low altitude in near-zero visibility conditions with no prior warning. 11 of the 40 drones were intercepted and destroyed. 29 had already hit their designated targets. The entire operation from first impact to final explosion lasted in 4 minutes and 17 seconds. The factory that built the weapons Putin called unstoppable was destroyed. The first satellite pass over Votkinsk came 6 hours after the strike. What the imagery showed stopped analysts in their tracks. 3 of the factory's 5 main production buildings completely destroyed. Walls collapsed, roofs gone. The missile storage warehouse reduced to a blackened crater 60 meters wide. The rail loading facility twisted and melted beyond repair. The power station, a pile of rubble, and smoke rising from the entire complex in a column visible from orbit. Russia's response was immediate and completely predictable. 7 hours of silence from state media, then a Kremlin statement claiming air defenses had largely defeated the attack, claiming damage was minimal and non-critical. The satellite images published by open-source analysts within hours destroyed every word of that statement. Inside Russia, panic spread faster than the government could contain it. Residents of Votkinsk had filmed the fireballs from their apartment windows. The government ordered every video deleted. They reappeared faster than they could be removed. Inside Ukraine, Zelensky was briefed at 3:47 a.m. 2 words: mission successful. He said nothing publicly for 48 hours. Ukraine lets the evidence do the talking. NATO intelligence officials privately confirmed the damage would take between 24 and 36 months to repair. 24 to 36 months of reduced Iskander and Oreshnik missile production. Fewer missiles reaching the front line. Fewer Ukrainian cities destroyed. Fewer Ukrainian families freezing in the dark. And in a bunker somewhere in central Ukraine, Charlie sat quietly looking at the satellite images as they came through one by one. His team celebrated around him, some embracing, some sitting silently with tears on their faces, thinking about the cities those missiles would never hit, the families that would never know what had been done for them tonight. Charlie looked at his team, nodded once, then turned back to his screen, closed the Votkinsk folder, opened a new one, a different factory, a different region. He pulled out a notepad, wrote 2 words at the top, Operation 2, and quietly, he started planning again. 6 months of preparation, 94 days of engineering, 1 moonless night, 40 drones, 4 minutes and 17 seconds, and a factory that took Russia decades to build, gone forever. Russia spent 3 years saying Ukraine cannot win this war, that Russian territory is beyond reach. Tonight, you have seen exactly what those claims are worth. This war is being won in dark underground bunkers, on encrypted screens, by young Ukrainians with steady hands and slow breathing, who are reaching deeper into Russia with every single mission, and they are nowhere near finished. If this story moved you, hit like right now, subscribe and turn on notifications, because Charlie's next operation is already being planned. Until next time, stay informed.